All right. Okay. I think we're live. Hey, everyone. Happy Sunday. Thank you for coming in. I hope everyone is happy, safe, and healthy, and doing okay. So we're going to start our sacred space session for this, I think, is the 19th or 20th session. So here we are. Pandemic is still going on, and we're going to continue these ongoing, even after the pandemic is over, whatever that ends up meaning. We'll go until we drop. We'll go until we really have nothing else to say. Okay, so I think everyone on Facebook should be able to see me. Okay, great. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get started, and I want to start by saying, as always with every week, thank you for being with me. And Gary will be with us too today, spending this time with us together. We're honored to be with you in this time of sensitivity and uncertainty and transformation, and we look forward to sharing time with you in our shared sacred space today. Now, the things we want to do today is I'll set sacred space. And then we'll talk about our overall topic for the day, which I am actually really nerdily excited about, which is the topic of manifesting your life vision. Now, I know that sounds corny, but we kind of take actually quite a bit of a different take on it here. And then after we talk about that, we will close sacred space. And then we'll do a bit of a Q&A session. We have a bunch of questions that have been backlogged. I don't think we'll do all of them. We'll do maybe 8 or 9 of them. And as you know, I prefer to do Q&A. We used to do it in sacred space. I prefer to do it outside sacred space, just in case a question brings up something about, a program or something that is actually, that we offer for a fee or whatever. And I just, I can skirt around it, and I will anyway, but I prefer to just keep that outside of sacred space proper. Because it's sacred space for me too, so I prefer not to be in that mode when I'm in sacred space either. Okay, so let's begin. So we'll start by introducing the idea of sacred space. We want to set sacred space in this hour and a half time period every week. And we intend for this to be a space devoid of fear, threat, and control, in order for us to open to higher guidance from within ourselves, however we take higher guidance to be. It could be, the gods you worship. It could be, angels. It could be ancestors. It could just be your own intuition, which is a nice sort of interface to anything else that you may not care to name, right? And we like this to be a safe sanctuary space for all of us to relax and surrender with no danger or threat, so that we can partake of the emotional nourishment and spiritual nourishment that comes from being in sacred space together in a group. And in opening sacred space today, I will propose that we follow the 4 principles of Presidian sacred space. Number 1 is confidentiality. Now, this is online, and the session is open, the video replay will be open. So the way we handle confidentiality here is through anonymization. So if you would like to leave comments, if you would like to ask questions, it's a little bit harder on Facebook. So obviously, if you're on Facebook as your profile, you'll just comment as your profile. But when you come into Crowdcast, if you would like to be anonymous, you don't have to be. Just go into your edit profile within Crowdcast, change your username to Mickey Mouse or Harry Potter, and then you'll come back in and we'll have confidentiality that way. The second principle is no threat or controlling, no fixing, no tough love, no intervention, right? The idea here is that we are giving up control, all of us mutually toward each other as well, so that we can hold space for each other in order for each of us to just be however we actually are. right? To be afraid, to be stupid, to be anxious, to be happy and relaxed, even though it's like a global pandemic, and to be okay with that, or to feel guilty about that, and basically to hold space for each other however we are. Now, there's nothing wrong with intervention. There's nothing wrong with, making book recommendations or telling about your own experience and, well, here's what I did, maybe you should try that. There's nothing wrong with any of that at all. But because those tend to exercise the levers of control, fear, right? I'm in a state of fear and you're giving me your recommendation, and threat, right? So I've given you this book recommendation, and if there's an implication that if you don't try it, then you're missing out on an opportunity, right? The idea here is that there's nothing wrong with all that, but because those hit the buttons of fear, threat, or control, they are intrinsically actions of the precincts of the profane. And the beauty of sacred space is that, it's only an hour or two a week, right? If this is all you do, which is fine. Within sacred space, we're specifically relaxing that muscle just to chill it out. We're not saying there's anything wrong with doing that. We're just not doing that here. So we can do other things that can only be done when that muscle is chilled out. Okay. The third principle is just a corollary to this one: no commerce. So nothing in this space may be sold or recommended or suggested, even if it's free. I can't sell you anything. I can respond to sort of questions, but even there, I push the Q&A to after sacred space in case it verges into like, well, yeah, I do this program, blah, 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 right? Because we are here for your energy. We're here for your energy, not for the things you bring that are outside of yourself. In other words, we're here for what you are intrinsically, not for what you do, not for what you provide. We're here for what you are, not for your function, right? And even recommendation is like a function outside of yourself. And then the fourth principle is that there is no expectation of participation. Okay, there's no pressure to do anything, chat, or comment, or like, or even watch. You can come and go as you please. You can be on your phone, when you're listening to me. That's perfectly fine. You can not watch and only watch during the replay. You can watch 3 seconds of the replay and mark it as like thumbs down or spam or whatever, right? It's perfectly okay. The nourishment here comes from the held space and our all mutual presence and attention to each other, from what you are, not from what you do or provide, right? And all of us together will tend to amplify that. So this is what I propose, these 4 principles. And if you are not okay with entering into this space together, that's perfectly okay. That's why I'm giving you the consensual kind of heads up front. So this is the nature of the space we're about to step into together. And if you're not okay with that, that's perfectly okay. We will give you a moment to withdraw from the group now. And that's cool. There's no fear, threat, or control for you to stay in sacred space either. We will catch up with you later in the profane space and still hang out, do business, no worries at all, right? But I will give everyone a moment now to make their decision, okay? And give you a moment to dial that in. Okay. All right, and so for the rest of us, we will now move together into sacred space. And as we come into sacred space together, the 4 principles we will observe are confidentiality, no fear, threat, or control, no commerce, and no expectation of participation. Okay. This is my favorite part of the week. Welcome. Okay, so the topic I want to talk about today is the topic of manifesting your life vision. Now, this is quite a substantial topic. It's a relatively new topic for me. I've kind of shied away from this topic for years just because of the loadedness of the word manifestation. But in the course of my work, it's just coming to the fore where people who have done healing, who have done bliss with me, they're kind of pushing against the boundary of what I've de facto set, and they're advancing is the wrong word, but they're kind of like discovering things. They're absorbing so much of what I'm teaching and sharing that they're bumping up against the doors that I kind of haven't really opened because I'm lazy. I don't want to talk about those things. And they're kind of asking about like, well, if this, then doesn't that imply these other things? And I'm like, well, yeah, I mean, I guess, yeah, I don't really talk about that. And my long-term advisors are like, oh, really? Why not? So I've kind of been pushed into this direction very gently, very lovingly, and I appreciate all my advisees for that. I think it's time to say a little something about this topic. So throughout our live sacred space sessions together, even in this series, we have touched on the topics of the Muse, of finding your bliss and meaning and purpose in life, of the golden thread, of the Crone and wise woman, even from last week, and a number of other related topics. So in today's session, I want to try and pull some of these together just very briefly to just give a basic high-level thumbnail of how to actually make some of this stuff happen in practice. We're like waxing poetic about the muse and the golden thread and your vision and purpose in life. But how do we use some of these principles to actually create, implement, make happen, and of course, manifest is like kind of a catch-all word, to manifest your life vision in an overall way. Now, as I've said, this is a huge topic. There are specifics around how this works in detail. And then there are specifics around how to do this in each specific area of your life, in career, in relationships, in money, in body, with family, with kids, in the political realm, in the spiritual realm, right? Each area of life will have its own connected but distinct dimension of your life vision, right? Your life vision isn't just your career. It impacts how you raise your family. It impacts how you are involved in the body politic, right, of your society or nation. And each area will have its own pattern, archetype, and mythopoetics as well, right? And all of these are ideally integrated, right? So the patterns and mythopoetics and how you think about the philosophy, the life vision and values, the bliss, right? The reason why you're on the earth. There will be an overall pattern to your life, but then there will be sub-patterns specific to everything I just said with regard to career, relationships, money, which is separate from career, right? Body, family, kids, political, spiritual. And then these ideally will combine to form your overall life vision. And this then is the blueprint, the pattern along which your innate powers of manifestation then follow. Now, it sounds complicated, but really what it is when we kind of do this in intensive practice, it's just a bunch of reflection, right? It's just a bunch of like auditing, assessment of all the other areas of your life. Because the point is, de facto, right? De facto, in reality, you're already doing this. It's just a question of how much of a plan there is. Are you like cooking, just throwing random ingredients in the pot? Or are you like, I like savory, I like a little bitterness and my whatever, and you're managing it? Or are you cooking rigidly to like a preset recipe, right? And there's no right or wrong answer. It's just, how are you cooking the different areas of your life, and are you okay with that? Are things tasting good? Are they, are they nourishing you? So here then, I'll just try to give a very high level of it, so you can start to think about how to do this in your life. You already have a lot of the component pieces conceptually with all the sessions, even from beginning, the difference between punishment and transformation from the very first session, like 20 sessions ago. And so what I want to do here is to talk about manifesting your life vision. Let me put up, we'll do a little nerdy slide share again today. And let's see if I can't make this work a little better this time. Let's share. Sorry, let's share Okay. So hopefully you can all see my screen. And I'll try to keep a little bit of the chat window open here. Can you all see my screen? Gary, can you all see my screen? Gary, can you guys see my screen? Oh, I may have disconnected. I'm not getting anybody in the chat. Oh, okay, great. There we are. Okay. Okay. So, so when we think about manifestation, manifesting your life vision, there's really two parts, right? There's the life vision part, which is what you want your life vision to be. And then there's the manifestation part, which is how do you make that life vision appear around you in the life of the world around you, as per your desires, right? And to kind of put some of this together, let me pull this down so the refresh rate isn't, well, let me, okay, hopefully that'll work. When we talk about life vision, we want to talk about, first of all, what is a life vision, right? How do we think about what is my life vision? And the first thing to really note here is that there are 3 levels of life vision. And we've talked about these 3 levels before, but never as like the 3 levels of life vision itself. And the 3 levels are basically, need, want, and desire. Hopefully you can see my writing as well. And if not, please let me know. So need, want, and desire. Need is obviously, sort of survival. Decisions made out of necessity. Okay. And when we say necessity, I'll make a distinction between necessity and fear. Want is more decisions made based on fear. Because, there's fear here also, obviously, when you can't eat, when you're fear for your safety and physical sort of security. But what tends to happen, and I'm just generalizing here, but what tends to happen here is that when you have an issue in terms of like, okay, I have no idea where my next meal is coming from, it is fear, but it hits a much deeper level. Sort of very deep scripts start to kick into play. Because here, when we talk about, let's say you have fear over, not getting a promotion, right? And if you don't get the promotion, well, you're not going to starve, no one's going to kill you, but you will lose prestige. So you have fear around that, where my wound of like being humiliated or fearing being shamed is going to get poked, and I'll feel like I'm not worthy of love anymore, right? And that's a very huge fear. But automatic scripts will come into play, but not quite at the same severity as it will happen over here. So that when people talk about, well, I don't know where my next meal is coming from, I actually, ironically, it's like, well, let's try to get you the help you need. But beyond that, it's more, when it's at that level, I guess what I'm trying to say is, you almost can relax, because at that point of desperation, you will do whatever you need to do. What I'm saying is, it will get done at that point. It will get done. Right, at the furthest extreme, if you need to like walk over other people, steal bread, knock over a bank or a convenience store in order to get that meal you need, you will do that, right? You will do that. Certain deeper programs will like trigger, and it will just it's still you doing it. If you commit a crime, it's still you that goes to jail, but it's something that's almost beyond you, that's bigger than you, that is part of a collective chassis or instruction set that we all get as not just humans, but living beings, okay? So that's what I would call the level of need, and we all have that. The level of want is more at the level of wounding. And this is everything we talk about when we talk about healing. The wounds you have, body image, all the things that like make you feel not worthy of love. And want is around all the things we do to try to reduce that pain. Soothing, drinking, numbing, and then shielding. Sorry for my chicken scratch. I would blame the writing pad, but my handwriting actually is atrocious, so I apologize for that. That's what happens when you skip class in the 3rd grade. So soothing, numbing, drinking, distraction, sex, relationship, shielding, prestige, anger, silence, poker face, all of this stuff. So want is in this area. This is necessity. This is fear. What is this fear? This is the fear of not being worthy of love. That's the greatest fear of all. Right? That's a greater fear in some ways than fear of loss of life. Right? Because when people truly feel they're not worthy of love, they feel that deep in their bones. That will often lead some people to ending their lives. Right? So we know that this overrides this in certain extraordinary cases, right? Or it can. Right? So it's not a sort of set hierarchy. This is a very dynamic back and forth kind of thing. So that's need and want. So these two are need and want. And I would argue, right, that kind of 80% of normal life is lived here. If you're a chakra person, right, this is sort of chakra 3. Manipura. On down. Right, this is like the red. This is like right here is like chakra 1, Muladhara. Okay, sorry, I'm getting distracted. Okay, so then the 3rd level of life vision is what we've been calling desire. Desire is what I would consider to be at the level of like your bliss, your life pattern, your calling, right? So bliss, calling. And at this level, the decisions you make are not driven by necessity or fear. They are driven by, for lack of a better word, love. Love, right? And what is a decision driven out of love? It's a decision. It's a decision you make for quote unquote no good reason. I can't explain why. I know he's a jerk. I just love him to pieces, right? He's like a brother to me. I do anything for him. It makes no sense, but I just I just worry about him all the time. Okay. And so when we say for no good reason, what we mean in the vernacular is no reason that falls under the jurisdiction of need or want. Love is a perfectly good reason, right? But it tells you something about our society when we say no good reason does not include a reason coming out of true desire. The other big clue here is that in the profane world, when we use these words, need, want, and desire, perfectly interchangeably. There is no distinction. Right? But here we're trying to start to draw these distinctions. Because just to jump ahead a bit, forget about manifestation or not. Forget about anything like New Age, hippy-dippy. Just in the daily sort of prosecution and execution of you living your life, it makes a big difference at what level you are living your life, at the level of need or want or desire. And let me be clear, all three matter, right? If you don't know where your next meal is coming here, you're not going to be thinking about like, how do I make a positive, material difference in the life of the world around me, right? In other words, all three of these levels have their own independent veto. They can veto your ass on any life path you try to go out on. And that's kind of the point. At all three levels, ideally, they are in harmony. They are in, or at least they're just not in conflict with each other. Because when they conflict with each other, they tend to cancel each other out. Okay, how are we doing on time? Okay, I'm just going to keep moving. Another overlay here is just a couple, just to give you some orientation, is Abraham Maslow, right? So for those of you who are the psych nerds, Maslow's hierarchy of needs. This is like actualization. This is like survival. And then what is it? It's survival, security, relationships, prestige, and then sort of some form of actualization, these 5 levels of actualization. And actualization, and in the years since Maslow's original version, his protectors and alakites and apologists have said, well, no, actualization, I don't think he even used the word actually. They've made this more and more skirting toward a higher and higher spiritual, much more than he originally kind of, and that's fine. You can evolve it. There's no problem with that. But originally, when he laid the system out, it wasn't his system of like how things should be. This was his observation, because he was a therapist. He talked to thousands of patients. It was his de facto observation of the pattern of what people stated they lived for. And so when you looked at that list, all of that stuff was, let me just change colors a bit here, right in here. So the Maslow hierarchy is here. As we've gotten more conscious in New Age, the Maslowians have tried to push this more in this direction. But as Joseph Campbell once said, specifically about the Maslow thing, when he read these 5 levels, he was like, these 5 things, survival, security, relationships, prestige, and self-development, right? Self-development, like I want to develop. It's not even like I want to do what, my calling is. I just want to develop. I want to be like more actualized, whatever even that means. Campbell's famous comment was, these 5 things are the things a person lives for. I mean, the person who lives for these 5 things is the person who has nothing to live for. They're a zombie. And he said this in talks in the 70s, and there was such a pushback, he stopped. He started using like follow your bliss, which is more of the carrot version than the stick. But he was like, people who live for just that are zombies because they have no sense of this. Right? They have no sense of their mythic pattern. They have no sense of their archetype. They have no sense of what they would die for. Right? And if you don't know what you would die for, then you can have no idea for what you are living for. Right? If you just live for need and want, and this Maslowian kind of stuff, not to be shamey about it, but it's just an observation. It's like if I were to live for nothing more than that, then I would be no better than just kind of a glorified animal. Right? Any given animal will do this. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's like this is 80% of the world. This is, 80% of me, right? But really, this sort of impulse toward the divine, which to me is really the thing that sort of separates us from the animals. Not that we need to be separated, is this sense of desire of like, what am I here for? And once I realize the pattern of what I'm here for, and I'm gripped by that mythic form, by that pattern, by that archetype, then these 2 things will start to fall away, right? I will not worry about what people think about me. I will not worry prestige. I will not worry about even relationships. I'll give up my old friendships when I go in a new direction, toxic, or not. I'll give up any sense of security, and I will even give up survival, right? The military, for instance, a properly sacred, sacralized military, not just the profane military, is a prime example of this. These perfectly, perfectly good, workable, functioning humans putting themselves in harm's way, right, for the sake of something that is bigger than them. They give up their Maslowian sense of survival for that. So you do see it. It is, it is, as they say, a thing. Okay, and then. The third overlay that's just kind of interesting, because I know many of you are thinking about like job transition, is need. Let me just clear this. This is job. This is career. And this is calling. right? Job, I just need money to pay the rent, pay the bills. Career, I'm making money, but I also want to be known for something, right? I want to win that Nobel Prize in literature. I want to win an Oscar, so I have prestige and people will love me and worship me, and I'll feel more worthy of love, right? Calling is, I'm an artist, I do this work, but purely in the Joycean form of art, where it is pure expression, it's not communication, which means if I make this sculpture and I express the thing that was coming out of me, then that's it, I'm done. I don't give a shit about whether anybody actually sees it or not. It makes no difference to me, right? But of course, if it's real, this is more along the lines of, say, like a Picasso, right? But Picasso is a great example of he integrated all three, so that he made money, he got the fame, but his main thing was this. It was led by this. Like when he transitioned from Blue Period to Cubism, it was a disaster for him financially, but he didn't care. And then eventually the rest of the world caught up. But even if it didn't, like in the case of Van Gogh, the world actually absolutely did not catch up with him when he was alive. But he did it anyway. Once you're at the level of calling, you are beyond the zone of choice and individual free will at the extreme of it. At the extreme of it. Okay. All right. So then, so that's different levels of life vision. The second thing about manifesting your life vision is, so that's the life vision. We want to talk about what manifesting actually means. Okay. And to do that, let me, oh dear. Okay, there we go. Let me talk a little bit about the mechanics of manifestation. Now, this will eventually be like a series of programs, probably, that go into detail. We're still figuring out how deep we will go on this, and then how deep we will go for all of this on each area of life, like career, money, et cetera, et cetera. It's terrifyingly vast, and we're going to try to keep it as simple as possible. So this is just kind of we're just going to skirt the treetops here a little bit. Okay. All right. So let's pick a different color here. So when we talk about manifestation, for me, because I'm biased, right, I want to start with your desire. Right? What do you want? What is your calling? Right? What is your bliss? What is your meaning and purpose in life? What is it that you would die for at the ultimate? Now, that's a tall order, and in a lot of ways you can think of when we do healing, it is to address the wounds that keep us in the realm of need and want. And as we do more and more healing, naturally the question then of desire comes up, which is the question of bliss. So people will often do healing, then they'll do bliss, then they'll go back down into healing, go back up. It'll circumambulate here. And then, so you start with want and need, which is fine. And then eventually you get to a clearer sense of your desire. And then to manifest that desire, you ask the question of, and it's not obvious, this is my feeling, my desire, but what then does my desire actually look like? Right? That's the question of vision. Right? What does my desire actually look like? In other words, if I fulfill my desire, what does that actually look like? What is the vision? What does your life, what does the world look like when you have played your hand out, everything turned up aces, fantastically, and you actually attain your vision? So what's the end result? What's the before and after? Right. So that is the question of vision. Now, here is a further question then. So typically, when all the sort of new age people talk about it, they're like, oh, we're all creators, which is fine. And we want to talk about what you want. And they don't really distinguish. You could want $1 million. You could want your next meal, So there's no discernment on the levels of life vision. And they say, okay, whatever it is you decide you want, just say it 50 times a day or write it out, just brute force manifestation. And people's practical experience of that is that sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Like with all snake oil, I mean, not to be, like with all anything. Sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. And the reason for that is that if you have not made sure these three things are in alignment, right, where they're all just, alignment's just a fancy word for, they're all pointing in the same direction. So that if this is pointing this way and this is pointing this way, when I move them both forward, they won't cancel out. Right? If what I want is more money and prestige, but my desire points me in this direction, when I move both forward, they will tend to cancel each other out. And I will be, what are the words we use? Stuck, blocked, frustrated, because how can I be the creator when the thing I want keeps like getting frustrated and self-sabotaged? Well, it's because you are the creator. You have these three channels of creation and they're pointing in opposite directions. So when you gun it hard, you jump out of bed, early every morning, like working your ass off, and things still don't go forward. It's not a punishment of the gods. It's like a transformation of like figuring out what your, kind of alignment is, that make sure these things are all pointing in the right direction. So my preference is to start with desire, because that presumes then a bunch of resolution down here. And then to say, okay, if my desire plays out all the way, what does the world look like? Now then beyond that, this is where we get a little bit super extra fancy. This is where we start pulling in the muse and mythopoetics and myth and all the things, all the delicious nerdy things we've been talking about, which is from a method standpoint. The question you ask then is, so this vision that you've articulated, expressed, that has come surging out of you finally after all this like work and reflection, what is the pattern to that vision? Right? What is the, to use another word, what is the archetype? So those of you who have done dream stuff with me, you know all about this. Like, you have a dream, what does the dream mean? And one of the ways we figure out what the dream means is we see what pattern it fits into. Is there a golden ball? Is there a lost board member? Is there a frog? And I feel fine using those terms because we've used those in this free and open kind of live sacred space series. Odysseus, right? The old Crone fairy tale. The Frog King. We look for patterns in your life vision. And what that does then is, and I'll use an example of this. When you find the pattern and archetype of your vision, it allows you to clarify the rest of the details of your vision. Right? So, and once you have the other details of your vision, then you set it within yourself. And then the outer world realigns to reflect it. That's manifestation. Okay. So, let me say that another way. So, if you've done healing with me, you know that we always say, and we've said it here, that the outer reflects the inner. The outer reflects the inner. And in healing, what we do is we look within. We look at all this spaghetti tangle of mess in the outer world. And we're like, eek, my life is like not the way I want it to be. And then I'm like, okay, don't worry about the outer relationship, the outer parenting. Just screw all that for a minute. All right. Take the vision of what you see around you and look for the pattern of what that is reflecting within you. Right? It's not victim blaming, right? It's and it's hard to talk about it like that because if something comes from within you, it doesn't mean it's your fault. Like, you could have, an illness that's triggered by some genetic thing you inherited. So it does come from within you, but I'm not blaming you, right? Something can come from within you and not be your fault. So when it's coming from within you, you go within in healing You resolve it, you do all the things we do in healing. And then when that resolves, you have changed the archetype. You feel better within you. And then somehow, by magic, voila, the outer jerk at work disappears over the course of the next few weeks. And in some of your cases, over the course of the next 48 hours. Some of the examples are quite dramatic, right, as you know. And the reason for that is outer reflects the inner. Outer reflects the inner, right? Now, in a healing example, that's not why we do it, right? We do it to have this inner sort of resolution and to stop the war within. But when that happens, a byproduct, a side effect of the inner healing is this outer change in your world, which is effectively de facto manifestation. If you've done the Bliss stuff with me, same thing in Bliss, we explicitly look for the mythic pattern. That's what that is. That's what we're doing when I say look for the mythic pattern, the things you resonate with. And then we match that to the thing you love to do. And we found the thing you love to do by doing the 120 master list, and from childhood, from all the other, we tease out your desire, we build it into a vision, we look for the mythic pattern, and then we do active reflection in the outer world, right? In the Bliss, so those of you who have done, there's many of you who've done the Bliss program, it's like the macro vision of Bliss, the micro vision of Bliss, ends up being the outer reflection of the 120 master list from the beginning of the program, filtered through vision and mythic pattern. Okay. So in a way, you could say that healing and bliss are like special cases of this, we've been calling it archetypal manifestation driven off and accelerated by the use of pattern and archetype in both directions, inner and outer. So another way to see this is this part here then is healing. This part here is bliss. And this part here is manifestation. Right? Ideally, you go from healing to bliss to manifestation. But then manifestation, you'll hit more walls and obstacles that will drive you back into healing. It's this circumambulatory spiral throughout the rest of your life. Another way to look at this is that this desire and vision is inner feminine, right? The holder of vision. And then once we have the vision, we need to manifest. So the engine that transforms vision into manifestation is the archetype. And that's where here we start loading into inner masculine. Right, sorry about that. Inner masculine and inner feminine interact across the stages of manifestation. She comes up with the vision. He's like, I need to translate it into words I understand. And then, I get to work. Right. And all of us have inner masculine and inner feminine within us, regardless of our external declared gender. Okay. So what I teach then is at the highest level is this archetypal manifestation. The specific things you've experienced are manifestation for healing and manifestation from bliss. But now it's like people who have gone through basically everything I teach in those areas are like asking about the more general case. And that's why I'm kind of being pushed or led into talking about it at this level as well. So I want to say just a teeny bit more about the levels of life, okay? Because this is an important point, even at the thumbnail level. My bias, and I call all these things biases, and you can bias in a different direction if you want. But what I try to do is I try not to say my way is the right way. I try to say this is my heavy bias, and I'll explain why I'm biased in this direction. And then you can look at my reasons, and you can say, I look at all those reasons, and I go in a different direction, and that's fine. That's perfectly good. So my bias, heavy bias, is to teach at the level of desire. Why is that? Why not teach at the level of need and want? The reason for me is that, first of all, this is calling. This is like the point of everything. This is like the reason why you're on the earth anyway. So why not make sure this is being driven, right? And then these guys should follow in the same direction anyhow, right? In other words, it's like, you know, the arms and legs, the body, the heart, the mind, feed into what hopefully like are enabling, I'm just making this up, enable the soul, enable the meaning and purpose of your life, right? The point of being on the earth is not just to eat, drink, and be merry and, you know, be the alpha ape, and then live out your life. There's a thing beyond that at the meta level you're meant to do when you're here. And I say that with such certainty is because when people get clear and resolved here, they all 100% of the time naturally move up to this level. They always ask this next question of like, okay, I have all the money I want, everything's secure, everything's fine, everything is happy. Why am I here? Why am I here? It's not a luxury. It's the point of it all. It's not a luxury any more than, you know, this like massive plant flower thing in the jungle exists, and one of the things it does, it blossoms this single jungle flower, right? Is that single jungle flower a luxury, or is it the point of the whole affair, right? And my view is that it's the point of the whole affair. So that's one reason. And then the other reason is just from a purely brass tacks practical matter. If you go just by need and want and you're driving forward and your vision is like, I want to be the best lawyer in real estate, right? And the pattern is, or I want to be the best sports agent in sports management. And my pattern is Jerry Maguire, and I want to be just like Jerry Maguire. And my reflection is I'm going to have friends like Jerry did. I'm going to have clients like Jerry did. I'm going to make speeches like show me the money like Jerry did, blah, 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 blah. So that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. The only issue is that need, want, and desire, they each have a veto. They each have a veto. And if you live your life below this line and you never even turn over the card of what your higher desire is, you have no idea if this Jerry Maguire path is in harmony with your desire or is in direct conflict with your desire. And it's a coin toss. Nobody knows. I mean, if you don't know, nobody else is going to know, right? And so you're kind of driving in the dark with no headlights, right? And people who go straight through and they fulfill the Jerry Maguire or whatever it is, it's a stupid example. They're like, oh, I was fated to do this. Well, maybe this kind of was also happened to be in the same direction. But where they're stuck, they're like, I'm doing everything right and the next guy's advancing, I'm not. Why is that? It's possible that your higher desire points in a different direction, right? Even anything, legal, accounting, investment banking, there are always people there who are like, oh my gosh, you know, she was born to do this. Look at her. She's like hacking away on the battlefield, laughing and smiling and singing while she's doing it. Like clearly all three are aligned in a case like that. And other people, it's like they're making tons of money, they're successful, and they're always angry, they're pissed. You know, they have ulcers, they can't get out of bed, they can't sleep. I mean, it's not rocket science, folks, right? It's like okay, there's probably some conflict. And desire, need, and want is a lens for doing that. So I'm like, at the very least, let's just turn over the card, see what it is. If you want to stuff it down after that, you can still stuff it down, but let's just get more information. I'm a business guy. I like more data. I like more information before I make my big life decisions. And that's the trick. This is never inert. This always manifests in whatever direction it's supposed to manifest. Another way of saying it is, whether you believe in this manifestation, new age, mumbo jumbo or not, you are always still manifesting. The car of your life is always still going at 100 miles an hour, whether you are actively steering or not. The GPS is set. It was often set when you were 7 or 8 or 9 years old, and you're running, right? You're running. And the question is, do you want to look at the GPS or not? Right? Do you want to look at the destinations of the GPS that were attempted to be edited out by your parents and the adults around you when you were a kid. And when you find those edited out GPS destinations, like, what are you going to do about it? Right? That's despite the ridiculous analogy, that is the question of our life, right? That is the drama of our life, how we prosecute that question. Okay. So let me just go through my notes here, see what else I wanted to say. The key to this, transforming desire and vision into manifested outer reflection is pattern, archetype, right? This is why dream and mythopoetics, fairy tale, myth are so powerful. You don't have to reinvent the wheel, right? When you dive into the world of archetype and myth and metaphor, you are able to draw on the entire library of collective human experience. This is why, like, even English lit as a humanity, liberal arts in college, is a great, springboard for like anything else you want to do, even if you want to be an engineer, because it gives you this power of being fluent in the language of pattern. Nobody really explains it like that because we've lost so much of these values, right? But that to me is the real reason. You can draw on the entire library of collective human experience from the dawn of recorded history, right, as encoded in the enduring pattern and archetype that have been passed down to us. Right? The things we use are Jonah the whale from the Bible, right? Odysseus and Tiresias from 3,000 years ago, Greek tradition, Hindu tradition, Catholic tradition, Celtic, right? Native American, African, Aboriginal, traditional culture archetypes. All of these are part of our collective human heritage. And with these patterns, the deeper and larger your library is, the more different patterns you can pull to help you diagnose, clarify, identify, and understand just what freaking pattern is at work in your own life. What pattern your own life happens to have been fashioned after. And then once you have that pattern, a pattern is a map. Right? Once you have that map, you can really step on the gas and accelerate the manifestation of your life, because you don't have to slow down at every intersection to ask directions and get your bearings and reassess. You know where you're going. You just crank on through the small towns between you and your next destination, because you literally know where you are going in life at a very high level, at a level of desire, love, and bliss. Which, by the way, right, desire, love, and bliss, let's just be clear here. This level, desire, love, bliss, is sacred. This level, need, want, fear, threat, control, is profane, right? And as an advocate and shameless evangelist of the sacred, my heavy bias is to run your life at this level. Make sure these are not in conflict. If they are, there's a million ways to make money. There's a million ways to get prestige and to have people ooh and ah over what you do. So this is the more flexible thing. This is the thing that, you were called to do on this earth. So there's ironically less flexibility here. And if you do this and you happen to still want to make money and not be ashamed of yourself, that's just tons of ways to make that happen, right? So the most powerful manifestation happens in the precinct of the sacred, not in the precinct of the profane. And we know this when we look at the nature of sacred and profane, right? So we say, oh, this life levels thing follows the pattern of sacred and profane. So you find the pattern and then you look at the pattern to get more clues about this pattern that you're running. So here's an example. So when we say, sacred and profane, so what does that mean? One side's sacred, one side's profane. One side is sacred, one side is profane. And when you ask a question of, well, given that, which one should go first? Well, then one way to do it is you look at the pattern of sacred and profane. And when you look at the pattern of sacred and profane, sacred always comes first. The temple is always built first, and then the marketplace springs up around it. The temple never looks for a marketplace to put itself in the middle of. The temple always comes first. The sacred always comes first. That's why here then, we take the learning from the pattern, the archetype, and then bring it back to bear on our actual situation. And in our actual situation, we say, well, this is sacred, this is profane. We know from the other side that sacred comes first. So what if we made desire come first? And if you did that, things would work out pretty well, right? So that's an example of how to use the pattern to like arbitrage almost, right? It's like, what's the example we always use? It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle. It's like doing a jigsaw puzzle while you're looking at the picture on the box. Now, I know you jigsaw aficionados are like, oh, that's cheating. Well, this is life, and you only have one, wild and precious life, and the clock is ticking. So, and there's no ruling. You're not going to get punished for cheating, right? When you use archetype. So go crazy, right? Go crazy. Look at the box, every single piece. So you look at the box, you look at the pattern, and then you look at a given piece, and you're like, this could be over in this area, right? And you start to sort out the jigsaw puzzle of your life using the power of pattern. So the pro tip here is that when you're in reflection, right? And this is the last thing because we're running short on time. But this is just so nerdy fun. So one way to do this is, so you've identified the pattern, okay? And the pattern is incompletely reflected in your outer world. Because it hasn't been clear and these things have not been fully aligned. So your bliss pattern is imperfectly reflected in the outer world. How do you accelerate the completion of its reflection in the outer world? The way you do this is, imagine the pattern you see is an elephant. And there's a trunk to the elephant. Please don't show this to my artist daughter. She'll be like mortified at how bad an artist I am. Okay, so that's my elephant. Apologies to elephants everywhere. So you're like, my pattern is an elephant. And every elephant has a trunk. And in my outer reflection, I don't see any trunk. Where's the trunk? I'm a nincompoop. I'm a horrible. Maybe it's not really my bliss. I don't know. Okay, not to worry. Because you have a vision of the trunk, okay, you discern and deduce that your pattern, well, it's a trunk. So it could be an aardvark. It could be a porpoise, maybe, or it could be an elephant. Then you do more reflection, you do more research, you do more work, you do more questioning on my desire and vision, like we do in Bliss. And then you're like, no, it's not an aardvark, it's an elephant, Great. Now you've got the pattern. And you're like, but there's no trunk in my outer world. I'm a failure. It's like, no, don't worry. Just like the jigsaw puzzle. If you don't see the trunk, and that's what you're most familiar with and excited about, if you concede that the pattern is an elephant, you can also look for things that look like an elephant's foot, like an elephant's tail, like an elephant's ear, like the grayness of the elephant's skin. And chances are you'll see something like that in the outer world. Low-hanging fruit, we call it in the consulting world, low-hanging fruit. That's already, just by accident, already manifesting in your outer world. Because it's just so easy. Because for the foot to manifest, it's completely in alignment with need and want. The foot makes money. Everybody loves the foot. They buy the foot hand over fist. So the foot of your elephant pattern manifests in spades. So because you know the foot is a part of your larger bliss pattern, you see this thing you're doing. It's like, okay, this part of your job, don't quit it. Keep going. It's a part of your bliss. I mean, it's a longer road to like everything to meet up and put together in the final jigsaw puzzle. But because you're looking at the box of the jigsaw puzzle, you know this foot is part of the pattern. So the pro super advanced tip is, metaphorically, you grab that part of your life, the foot, and you pull it. You pull it. You pull on it aggressively. You keep doing more of the same along the pattern of the elephant. And eventually, the entire rest of the elephant gets pulled through. It's like a fabric or a Kleenex. I only want the trunk because I'm so excited about the trunk. I only see the foot. So just take the foot, pull it, pull it, pull it, and eventually you get the trunk as well. Right? Okay. So there's, like I said, this is a humongous topic. I don't even know how I got pushed into talking about this, but it's all about the physics of pattern and reflection. And once you have that, there's all kinds of ways you can exploit the physics and mechanics of it to accelerate your bliss, right? Like for me, right? For me, my overall pattern is, there are certain mythic forms that I follow the pattern of. But for me, like the goal of the pattern is to, and I said this before, is to restore the power of the sacred in our world, right? That's what I care about. Now, a year ago, if you had asked me about this, I would have said sacred spaces only in person, only in people who have been initiated. They've done a bunch of programs. They can come in. It can't just be people off the street, and it's got to be in person. A year ago, that's what I would have said. Ha ha, right? Now you're a year and a global pandemic later. I have been pushed to realize that it is okay to do it online. But for me, the sacred is the key. The thing that I was like, okay, I still need to work on sacred space. So regardless of the how, which is in person and people who have done all this preparatory stuff, right? I went back to the what, right? What is the desire and vision? What is the elephant trunk? Which is a space, sacred, a space devoid of fear, threat, and control. Well, I'm like, well, shit. I mean, can we try to do that online? Can I try to do that online with people who have never heard of me? They just walk in off the street on Facebook or whatever. And we tried it, and it, so far 19 sessions in, it seems to be working all right. Right. So that's pulling on the foot to bring in the rest of the elephant. You know what matters and what does not matter, right? Because you have the pattern, so you can move fast and make clear, strong decisions very, very quickly. Okay. So that's it. That's all I really wanted to say about this manifesting your, life vision thing. Let me turn this off. Okay. I hope that was interesting. I have no clue. I mean, I get feedback on these sessions, and please continue to send me feedback. I love getting feedback on these sessions. I'm so neck deep in it that it's hard for me to tell if, when I talk about something like this, if it's so obvious, people are like, why do you even need to say this? Or if it's like so over their heads, or like, I don't even understand the words that are coming out of your mouth, or it may be just right. I don't have a good sense of that. So email me, message me, let me know what you think of all this. So that's what I wanted to say about life stages and manifestation. It's 11:05. We do want to make some time for the Q&A, and Gary will lead us through that. But the last thing I want to say here is, you would do exercises like I just described for all areas of your life: career, relationships, money, body, spiritual, familial, kids, parenting, right? And the tendency is that when two or, and in all of these, there's like need, want, and desire levels, right? So it's like if we did a retreat on this, it would be like a 7-10 day retreat. And so the thing is, like, when two or more of these are clear at the desire level and integrated, so let's say career and money, or body and relationships, or parenting and career, right? When two or more of these areas of your life are at the desire level, because you've healed up to that level, and you're going through the archetype to reflection, and you have two areas of your life that are like that, they tend to like co-amplify and grow, and tend to start greedily pulling the other parts of your life in as well. And that's not a clean, that's a very messy, often painful process. That is a process of tremendous, profound transformation. You are the caterpillar in the cocoon, and your body is literally melting off your bones for you to become this butterfly, right? And it's not for everyone. Some people see it very clearly, and they're like, hell no, I'm not doing that, right? I'm not doing that. And that's okay. That's okay. Okay, so that is a very general, quick thumbnail of how manifesting life vision works. I hope that was helpful. There's no program yet. I'll get to that at some point. But that's what I wanted to share with you today, because specifically in the series, because in the pandemic, need and want for many of us are being put on hold. What I mean, it's not like we stopped needing and wanting, but the things we would do, the regular routines, the tracks we were on, where we were pursuing just need and want, have been completely derailed. Right? And we're scrambling to make sure the need is still there. And like I said, that just tends to take care of itself by hook or by crook, elbowing, whatever you need to do, right? Because very base animal instincts kick in. But then at the want level, we're all sitting at home. Nobody cares how I dress. Nobody cares what car I drive anymore. It's like, it's insane to have these things taken away. Scales fall from your eyes. And it's almost this cheat. It's like when Pasteur discovered penicillin, right? It's like they weren't washing their petri dishes. They had a sink full of dirty petri dishes, and some mold started growing in them, and all the bacteria was getting killed by the mold. And they're like, huh. So we got antibiotics because they didn't do their dishes because they were lazy. They were nerdy doing their own thing. So in a similar way, not to trivialize everything, all the suffering that's happening in the pandemic, but this enforced full stop, emergency brake pull of all the things we did for need and especially for want are completely put on hold. And with that to the side, it's not healed per se, but it's almost like I gave you enough morphine to make you stop thinking about need and want for 4 months. And you naturally look around and start looking up into, oh, look, there's that desire track of the train up there. What's that? What's that? And in this artificial way, time has stopped and you have been released from your regular hamster wheel. We all have. So that's why I'm kind of excited to just inject some thumbnail over to you now while we're still in pandemic, because you're in the zone where time has stopped. You do have the luxury. I don't mean time or money. I mean the luxury of the bullies just kind of out taking a smoke break because there's nothing for them to do, right? So it is a chance to kind of upshift to this desire level, find your elephant trunk and start pulling it through. And so, so the exercise between this week and next week is to just try and do this 4-circle exercise thing for yourself. Right? What is your desire, vision? What pattern does it follow? And how is it already reflecting in my life? If you've done the Bliss program, you've already done a ton of this work. Just go through your old notes or do them again. Why not, right? And just fill them out. And then, once you look at the pattern that's being reflected, where is the archetype already accidentally, through coincidence, already being reflected right in front of me? Easy, low-hanging fruit. And then how do I grab that and start pulling it forward to get the rest of the elephant to come through and faster as well? Okay, it's more involved than that, but that's the high level. Okay, so that's it. And Gary, stay with me. I'm just going to go ahead and close Sacred Space, and then we'll have some Q&A led by Gary. So I'll close the session now so that we're not doing Q&A in Sacred Space. Our next session is Sunday. It's free. It's open. Please invite other people. Ask a lot of questions, and we'll do Q&A sessions as we're about to do today. You have the call to action link there on your page to sign up for the next session as soon as you like. So I hereby close this session of our shared sacred space. Thank you for holding this space with me, and thank you for sharing the nourishment, the emotional nourishment, the spiritual nourishment of this shared sacred space with me and us. I give you my blessing. Go in peace, bestowed with blessing, free of fear, free of threat, free of shame, and the undue control of others. Have a great day. Have a great week. And I'll see you in the next session. Thank you. And for those of you who would like to stay for the Q&A, you're welcome to do that as well. Okay. Thank you. Hi.
Hi, thanks, Artie. Wow, that was the first time I heard you give talk on archetypal manifestation. For me, it was like a whole of my last 6 or 7 years of my career graph just mapped out in front of me. Never seen it from this perspective, so thank you for that.
Thank you. All right, come on, you're still working. Come on.
You were like mapping the entire transformation and looking at it from above. So it was really cool. Thank you.
Thank you.
So we have about 9 questions that we will cover today.
All right. Let me pull my
everything to do with all the past sessions that we've discussed, masculine and feminine and initiation and vision and all of that. So I'm really excited. I'll dive into the first question right away. And this goes as, hi, Artie, you mentioned last session that different aspects of inner masculine and inner feminine can appear in dreams. Right? So can other board members also appear in dreams? And if so, how do you know who is who? And how do you know if a male dream character is an aspect of the inner masculine or a different board member, like the inner bully or incompetence, etc.? So how do you basically identify these dream characters?
Got it. Okay, thank you for that question. So yeah, this is more of a healing question, but it's fine. It does depend on what they're doing to figure out, like, knowing who is who. So the inner masculine, of course, will appear as a masculine figure, as a man, as a dad, as a brother. There are certain animals that, not as a hard and fast rule, but tend to incline toward the masculine or feminine principle. So dogs tend to be masculine. Snakes, kittens tend to be feminine. Lions are very interesting because if it's a male lion, it's very solar, which is masculine, but then it's a cat, so it's feminine. So there are certain animal symbols that symbolize the integrated inner masculine, inner feminine, which is very powerful when they start showing up in your dreams. So that's easier. And then when you look at what they actually do, right? Well, regardless of masculine or feminine, if a character is like bullying you and is in the position of authority, like a parent, grandparent, police, judge, soldiers, right? Soldiers looking, not soldiers running away, but soldiers looking for like a fugitive. That's typically more on the incumbent power, bully side, bully/protector side. And then the one exiled, right? The one you're looking for, typically when you're doing healing, what we call the lost board member in healing, will typically act like that. It will be the prisoner, it will be the runaway, or it will be the invader, the one chasing you, right? The one chasing you. Not as the authority, but as the monster, right? As the thing you fear. Because if the police chase you, you're like, oh, I did something wrong, pardon me, let me like talk my way out of it. And you're not that afraid of a policeman. If like, a whale or a shark is chasing you, you're just in terror and you run, right? And it also tends to be the thing you're repulsed by or scared by, because that's how you regard that part of your inner self. So it's very contextual, right? It's very contextual. And that's where I tend to depart from other forms of dream reading. So because it's contextual, I depart from like when you have internet dream directories and you dream of a butterfly and you like type in butterfly and it says, oh, butterfly, means renewal and rebirth. And it's like, oh, that's very nice, but what does that even mean? Like, that doesn't tell me anything, right? because the context of the butterfly, was the butterfly like, did it come out with only one wing? Was it smashed? Was it like this giant butterfly, like laser beaming the city of New York? The context matters, right? The context matters. It's like saying, oh, love. What does love mean? Well, is it platonic love? Is it illicit love? Like, what is it? The context matters, right? So, so that's where I depart from just rote symbol, like direct dictionary-based dream reading. But then in the other direction, I also kind of shy away from anything that's more like therapy-based, where it's like, well, I can't even look at your dream until I know your entire history of your family of origin and what traumas you've gone through. And it's like, no, the dream has its own language. So what I tend to do is I read the dream based on who's there and who's doing what to whom. I have no idea how that relates to your real life, but I try to translate the symbols into some kind of like cohesive narrative of how I'm seeing it. And it's not authoritative. It's just like, you bring it to me, I'm reading it with my biases and everything else, and I'm handing it back to you, and then you decide how it fits your life. Because I don't, I'm lazy. I don't do that part. But yeah, so that's my answer to that question.
Yeah, I remember sometimes you even say that in the dreams, the characters that you're seeing, the context also depends on where you are in the dream and from which angle you're viewing the whole thing. Are you living it, or are you watching it from above, from the sides? All of those things matter as well. So context really defines the tone of the characters in the dream. So
absolutely.
Fantastic. So the next question. Okay, so this is going back to like the brass tacks of things with respect to dreams. How do you access your particular admixture of masculine and feminine if you don't recall dreams at all?
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so I just talked about manifestation and outer inner reflection. So that makes it much easier.
Yeah.
So your admixture of masculine and feminine, your admixture of everything really, is reflected in the life of the world around you. If you want to know what your inner world looks like, open your eyes and look. Right? Open your eyes and look. So it's reflected in your favorite movies, in your favorite stories that you think about again and again. It's reflected in the memories of your past life that you go back to again and again and again. You're doing the laundry, you keep thinking about the scene from your childhood. It's reflected in your relationships, in your partner, in your kids, in your brothers and sisters, and your parents. It's reflected in workplace scenarios, jerks at work, right? People who are allies, people who are rivals. Now, I prefer dreams because they are this kind of untouched realm, right? That isn't loaded. Like I can't even really talk about chakras with everyone saying, well, my master says this. And I'm like, okay, let's drop it. Let's talk about something that nobody has any context for. So we can just look at the thing itself without any sort of super preconceived bias, right? So I prefer dreams for that level. It's super subtle and difficult to talk about admixture in terms of your actual quote unquote real life experience. And the reason is often the minute I say something, and I don't say it, but I would imagine the minute I say something like that, people will say, so you mean my abusive husband who did all this stuff to me is a reflection of something in me, so that it's my fault that my husband abused me, right? And I'll tell you what I would say in that, but it's like, I just avoid stepping on that landmine altogether. It's just simpler. It saves everyone time if I just use dreams instead. But the answer, of course, is, like I said in the talk, there's no excuse for bad behavior on the part of a separate person, right? If there's a person that's abused you, that's done bad things to you, that's absolutely on them. But the prosecution of them is for law enforcement, right? and the healing of the trauma they created is for medical therapy. Right? And we don't do either of that here. What we do here is we're looking at the pattern with a healthy dose of mythopoetics and all the stuff that we do to try and discern what is the pattern and then what insight we can get from it. Because a former abusive ex, my attitude is like, the damage is done. You've already paid the fee, and I would just like to get more value for what we've already paid for. Right? I want to milk it and juice it for more gold because you've already paid, and you paid a lot. And you didn't choose to pay, but you did. So, the money's out the door, so we may as well like squeeze as much value out of this thing as we can. And it's not blaming you, right? Like we said before, you can have a gene that you inherited from your parents. That's not their fault either. They just passed it to you, right? That makes you like 100 times more at risk for getting heart disease or something else like that, right? So when you get heart disease, we say, yeah, it comes from this thing within you. And you're saying, oh, so you're saying it's my fault. It's like, no, we're not saying it's your fault at all. Something can come from within you and not be your fault. But we draw the line to saying it's coming from within you so that we know where to look to turn the switch off. Right? And like genetic, genetic medicine, they do that so that they can go and turn the gene off so your heart disease goes away, right, ideally. So anyway, that's why I use dreams, because it's much less loaded. But if you don't recall your dreams, you can use the diorama of everything happening in your life, right, to give you hints as to the admixture of, all the men and masculine figures in your life, including your dogs, are a reflection of your own inner masculine. All the women in your life, and also feminine objects, even animals certainly, but feminine objects, things that you keep close to your body, jewelry, right, that you like, images that you resonate with that tend to be feminine, are a reflection of your inner feminine, and then how those elements in your life interact. Right? Even if you have a lot of friends who are couples and they're always fighting, that's a reflection of some aspect of your own inner masculine, inner feminine. So you can do that. You can do that. I don't do that because it's hard to use real world examples. That's why I like dreams. They're not created by me. They come from within you, just like everything else. So when I read it and you go, oh shit, there is meaning there, right? Then hopefully, I've showed off my skills enough to impress you with the idea that, not that I'm right, but with the idea that like, okay, this dream is like a real thing. It's not because of the chili I ate last night and indigestion or whatever, right? And then that hopefully will get you to go in and actually do your interviews and investigate further. Because when you talk to the dream figures, that's how you actually find out the real juice, not through listening to my nerdy interpretations, right? That's just to get you revved up to go in and do the actual investigative work. Okay, that's what I have to say.
Great. So the next question is about the inner masculine in a woman. So you've talked about this, right? So you talked about the inner masculine's initiation. So what about the initiation of the inner masculine of a woman? How does that get initiated and mentored?
So it is often, not always, every person is different. But it is often the case that in someone who identifies as woman, that their inner masculine is often the lost board member, the one exiled and the one pushed away. And the reason for that is one of the tricks of the patriarchy, whose job is, or whose disease really is, to suppress the feminine in all its forms. It suppresses the feminine in men. You can't throw like a girl. You can't act like a girl. You have to be manly. And then when we see women out in the physical world, the patriarchy tries to suppress them in gross form, like women's bodies, controlling them, women's like rights, women's like power, all of that. And the surest way to take power away from a human woman in a patriarchy is to convince her that she doesn't have an inner masculine. Mm-hmm. Girls don't wrestle, girls don't talk loudly, and these are not masculine figures. Masculine, wrestling is not a purely masculine act, right? We just draw the line and arbitrarily make it so because it's an exercise of power. We don't want the feminine to exercise any power in a patriarchy. So anyway, we try to tell you that you don't have a masculine, right? So girls are told to not play with guns, not fight, not swear, not cuss, not smoke, all these things. And after a while, you believe you don't have, you're like, I'm not like that. Well, remember, the masculine is the function, regardless of your gender, that sets boundaries and then manifests, right? And, probably 90% of the women I work with have boundary control issues, wobbly boundaries. It's hard for them to say no. It's hard for them to voice their needs. It's hard for them to, express when something is uncomfortable for them. So they go silent, and that's taken as, consent or agreement, right? And if you're sitting there thinking like, oh my gosh, that's me, I'm terrible. No, you're not terrible. It's what the patriarchy has put in all of us, man and woman, right? And part of when we return to the sacred, we're trying to heal that, right? We're trying to create a safe space for us to discuss these things without pointing fingers and just, calling it what it is, so you can look at it, name it, and then start to decide what you want to do about it. So how does the inner masculine of a woman get initiated and mentored? I think the main thing is to recover it. Right? Mentor is Athena in disguise. And what you do have, if you're a woman in the patriarchy, is you still have your inner feminine. I mean, you have your inner masculine. You've just been duped into thinking you don't have it, right? But you haven't been duped into thinking you don't have your inner feminine. The only nasty trick that's been done there, typically, is that, yeah, you are feminine. You are a girl. You're the mother. You're a woman. And the job of the mother, woman, the feminine, is to nurture, support, be selfless, to serve. And we always conveniently leave out what for me is the most powerful, not the most powerful, but the most interesting, or just the most missed aspect of it, which is the power of holding vision. Right? You're the boss. You hold the vision for all of society. Or we've talked about this in countless sessions up to this point. So I think when you recover your vision, you recover your Athena, and then Athena goes straight to Telemachus and brings him back.
Yeah.
Right. So you recover your vision, or you recover your inner masculine. In either order, it doesn't matter. Whichever way you're drawn to, you do that. And then once you do one, they take care of it. I mean, the things are set in motion. You're open to this. Your lens is open mythopoetically. And then once the board of directors, I'm sorry, I'm using kind of healing specific language here, but once you bring one in and everyone within you gets the signal, like sees the writing on the wall that the boss, you, are okay with going down this journey of starting to recover and reharmonize, that's all. They just need your permission. They know what to do. Right? They're not stupid. Right? Your liver and your kidneys, you don't need to tell them every hour, now I want you to do this. Now I want you to process this enzyme. It's like they know what to do.
Yeah.
But your lungs know what to do. All you need to do is kind of get out of the way. Yeah. Right? But if you're forcibly holding your breath, your lungs are like, okay, I'll stop because you really want me to stop. And you suppress your inner masculine, or you suppress your vision. Once you finally let go, and the lungs are like, can I? And yeah, you start reading a book and you forget about breath control or whatever. Your lungs are like, okay, I know what to do.
Yeah.
Right? You can control your breath, or you can leave it alone and you won't suffocate. Right? That's how I think about it.
That's interesting you say that, because the next question, it's a two-parter, and touches on this exact point, which is how do you actually install the vision in the inner masculine?
Mm.
And do you do that by just talking to him like an inner board member? And the second part of the question is, would you say that to fully integrate and initiate the inner masculine, you actually have to implement the vision, which is also to say, do you have to do your bliss to do that?
Right. Okay. So, it can go in either direction.
Mm.
There's no hard, rigid rule of a sequence. And that's the beauty of these processes. It's, I see it's a woman who wrote, it's from your intuition, it will carry you through. And here's an example of some of the ways that can happen. So when you have a strong vision, the inner masculine will just take it and start collaborating on how do I implement this, right? In the slides we used, basically, once you have vision, you can skip pattern and it will start to reflect in the outer world already.
Yeah.
Okay. If you have the pattern, it's just having the pattern and leaning hard on the pattern is a gambit to accelerate manifestation. That's why this practice, I don't call it manifestation, I call it archetypal manifestation. We're using the archetype to, in an almost unfair way, as the image on the box of the jigsaw puzzle, right? To accelerate the fulfillment of the actual jigsaw puzzle in the outer world. So if you have a strong vision, even without the pattern, the inner masculine will just start taking the ball and running. But sometimes you need to feel really safe first in order to even sit quietly in a protected space, in a sacred space, to even develop your vision or let it come through fully, right? And for that, you need your inner masculine. So if you're like, I don't have a vision to give my inner masculine, then it's like, bring your inner masculine in and have him protect, and in that safe space, come up with your vision. Right? It's basically all these things need to happen, the sequence of which doesn't matter. You figure out what you have and then you fill out, from there. So there's no rule as to which comes first. You kind of have to get in there and see what you find and assess the situation. But the general pattern is that it's basically one first, and then the other, and then back again. It's like a team lift of a big piano. Like when you're moving a piano, it's like first you lift, and then, okay, hold it, I'm going to lift, and then we're going to move, and then I'll put down first, then it's kind of like that. You just need to, it's a coordination issue. But
and it kind of happens on its own, right? I mean, once you get into that groove of, healing yourself and recovering your inner members, and, it just kind of, the balancing of one side and the other side, one coming up, it just goes on its own rhythm, is what I've seen. Is that how it is?
Correct. And the point to make there is that it's a question of coordination, not power. Okay, not power. Because you may think, well, I'm so useless, I'm in the wrong career, and blah, blah, blah. No. It's a question of coordination, that's all, not power. Because you have ample power. And here's the proof. If you think I have no vision, I've been working, slaving away all these years, going in the wrong direction, oh my gosh, it's need versus wanted versus desire. I've only done need and want. I'm such a dunderhead, right? Blah, 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 blah. No. If you think about all the pain you have tolerated going, quote unquote, in the wrong direction, the abuse you have taken at the jobs that were not right for you, that you did anyway, brute force to make money and prestige and accomplishments. That's the proof of all the power you have.
Yeah.
It takes power to do the wrong thing that doesn't feel right and brute force stuff it down and get on with it anyway. That takes tremendous power.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So you do have power. It's just like your car is a Maserati, right? you're just driving it in reverse with the parking brake on. But
Oh,
because it's a Maserati, even though you're driving in reverse, you're still going 90 miles an hour.
wow.
Okay, so you have power. Let's not say you don't have power.
Yeah.
But now
Yeah.
imagine what you could do if you like actually programmed your GPS to where you wanted to go, which means you have to know where you want to go, blah, 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 right? And you started going in the right direction and took the parking brake off.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you were going 90 in reverse with the parking brake on for like a decade, going in the right direction, 1,000 miles an hour with the parking brake off, you'll make up that lost time in no time. And there's no end point anyway. It's driving forward in the right direction is your bliss.
That is the point. Yeah.
There is no end point. It would be hell if there was an end point, because then you reach it and that would be it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right? The fact that it's infinite is a feature, not a flaw.
Yeah.
So that's why I love the work I do, right? Because I'm like, every single one of you is a Maserati.
Mm.
You know, so when we finally hit it and you're like, oh my gosh, because the GPS will go anywhere you tell it. When you finally know, you like hit it. And then sometimes you look, it's like, oh wait, that was in my saved locations. Shit. I put it as a saved location when I was 7. Like, okay, I'll be easier. I won't typo the address. Just hit it. Right, parking brake off. Boom. And when I'm kind of metaphorically in the room when an advisee does that, there's just nothing like it. That's like, that's the high, right? I get a real high from that. Okay, so that's what I have to say. Thank you for that question.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And the next one, I love this one because you've been talking about how Hecate has been coming up for you. And in the previous sessions, we've had a couple of people mention Hecate.
Oh, dear.
So, it's lovely. This is a question. It says, I have a connection to Hecate. She directed some writing through me before I had ever heard of her. I'm so intrigued by that. I really want to know how that happens. So, and then she says, I recently meditated to meet my muse, and I saw a young woman in a corn silk yellow shift dress and heard the phrase, woman of darkness. That was it. Is it possible that Hecate is my muse? Or is this just an aspect of my inner feminine? Or are both true?
So thank you for this. This is a great question. Thank you. So I give honor to Hecate. I love this question. The main answer is I would ask her directly. I'll make some very minor comments, but Hecate is not the kind of goddess that I would ever mansplain. So I'm very, like, I'm approaching this very gingerly and with reverence. I would say, for any figure that comes to you that you think may be the muse, for any figure, one thing you can do to make yourself comfortable with trusting her, I mean, not overall, but on a practical level, where she says, okay, go to this meeting, not that meeting today, right? And you're like, okay, how do I, like very practical issues. You can give her small tests, not testing whether it's just calibrations for yourself to make sure you're hearing her clearly, right? So low stakes things she may guide you to. So when she says, it's time for I want you to cancel all your meetings today and just read this book. That's relatively low stakes, so you can do it. And then you can see if she is right. Right. Now, the right answer, like the rightness of that move of reading, may be very subtle and you don't notice it. You get a call from your dad whom you haven't spoken to in 10 years and have this great he would have never called back, right? It's because you cancel the meetings. You will have an experience like that, but then you have to remember to like credit it back to the muse. So often we're like, oh, that was great, and we don't connect the dots. right? So if you connect the dots, and sometimes the thing won't be immediately obvious, or even if it's obvious or not obvious, it will happen after a delay, after a few days, after a few weeks. So it's subtle, right? But after a while, you will realize she is basically right 10 out of 10 times. And then you will know she is reliable. Then you will know she is reliable. And then after 10 times, you'll recognize like what it feels like when she's coming to you. You know, that's the first thing. The second thing is, I would study the symbol itself, the archetype. So Hecate herself is like, she is a guide to the chthonic, the dark underworld, which doesn't mean it's bad or evil. Dark is not bad, right? Just like nighttime is not bad. She's like a feminine Hermes, a trickster goddess, a boundary crossing goddess, but a bit softer, pre-Olympian, pre-patriarchal almost. More conciliatory. Her symbols are keys, dagger, rope, double torches. And she is an active working guide into the underworld. So it's not a god like, oh, flowers and rainbows and unicorns and love and light. Hecate is like, Hecate is the goddess of witches and crones as well. And I would imagine that, you know, she would not take well to the softening of the word crone, where it's like, well, I like, you know, wise woman better. It's like, no, you only don't like crone because of the patriarchy. Fuck the patriarchy. You're a crone, you can own it, right? I'm not saying that. I'm imagining that Hecate might have that kind of reaction, but I don't know. I would ask her directly. When she's shown as a triple-headed goddess, either with 3 human female heads, and like Hermes, she is at the crossroads. So she is the goddess of the three-way crossroads, not the 4-way, but the 3-way. Okay. And then also alternatively, she is shown with 3 heads of animals. And the animals are horse, serpent, and dog. Horse is a symbol of body. So she's body, sensuality, sexuality, physicality, instinct, intuition. So that's horse. Serpent, of course, is feminine goddess power, right? Serpent is the animal that rebirths, sheds its skin and lives again, dies and leaves a corpse and continues living. You know the serpent is a powerful feminine when it shows up in Genesis, in the Garden of Eden, next to Eve, so that the patriarchal god Yahweh can like actively push it down and blame it. Right? That is the coup d'état that happens, the military junta takeover of the matriarchy by the patriarchy, written in Genesis, right? So serpent, and then dog. Dog is sort of masculine, but there was a question about female dog. It's like female dogs happen all the time. And here, the dog, in the form of Hecate, dog is you can almost say that dog is masculine in the diurnal, heroic realm, and then feminine in the nocturnal, chthonic realm. A dog is often a guide through the underworld, to guide you in, and more importantly, to guide you back out. Your trusty, man's best friend, right? So the feminine dog is that sort of Hecatean sort of guide. There are aspects of Aphrodite and desire in there as well. In some traditions, she is a maidservant to Aphrodite. It's because she's pre-Olympian, but she's also very much Crone. She was one of the few Titans before the Titan War that went over to the side of the Olympians, and because of her defection, she was allowed to keep her full set of powers in the Olympian world. So anyway, those are just some things. If you look that up, you'll learn more. But in the end, I'm just giving you kind of like food for thought, grist for the mill. The ultimate way to know is to just go in and talk to her, interview her, ask her directly, tell her I said hi, call me. Put in a good word for me. But yeah, so that's Hecate. That's Hecate. Woman
That's
of darkness. Woman of darkness. It's like that's almost a Rorschach test. You know, woman of darkness, is that woman of darkness, or is that woman of darkness, is that evil? Is that naughty? Is that bad? It's a Rorschach test. It's her test to you, in a way.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gary, what did you have to say?
I know. I was going to say that I'm going to kind of, the next question that I'm going to pick up from the list is something that resonates so much with this question and what you just said. Is that does, our muse or your muse have a name? And because there was so much of description about Hecate and everything, so I thought that this was interesting. So
you want to skip over to that one?
Have a name, and can the muse be a collective energy?
Yeah. So a question like that, I would say, I would just ask the muse her name, and she will tell you. Collective, you can ask her yourself. You can ask yourself. So there's nothing wrong with these questions. It's a natural impulse to want to know more. But the most powerful thing is, like, instead of asking rumors and hearsay about grandma, go visit her. Bring her you've done all the research. You know what chocolates she likes, so bring her favorite chocolates and just sit with her. If she's anything like my grandma's used to be, you'll leave her place, 10 pounds heavier, but that's okay. Food is love, right? So, so I would spend time with her. I get a little uncomfortable is too strong a word, but I get a little reluctant to get too much into like, so what's her name? What's her tradition? Is it collective? Is it whatever? These are fair questions, but it's like after a while, it's like to go too deep in that direction is to almost try to box her in and put constraints on. And never mind that she doesn't like that and she'll like lash out. I'm not even talking about that. It's just disrespectful after a while, right? It's like, let's stop whispering about her, and like, you go talk to her, go spend time with her. And she will, she's the muse, so she'll tell you everything. Right? She'll tell you everything. And just be careful what you agree to.
Do you get to choose? Really?
After a while, no.
Yeah.
After a while, you lose the illusion of choice.
So that's wonderful. And there's another wonderful question about the Crone and the Muse that I want to touch on now. So the question here is, the Crone has always been a strong figure in my life, and she often speaks through me and delivers strong messages to people. And these can be often very cutting and strong, painful for people, and in the moment, because it just comes out of the blue, I guess. So years later, they can often come back and thank me, but not always. Some people do that. Is there a way to sugarcoat her message or round off the sharp edges a bit, because it's hard to watch the pain in the other person who's receiving the message?
Yeah, thank you for this question. So good job. So yes, so what I would do here, and this is the theme of just ask her, right? But you can consult her, the Crone herself, because she speaks to you, and through you, so you can ask her questions. That's like the biggest pro tip I have. Or even like negative voice within you that's like, oh, you suck and nobody loves you unless you're like rich and beautiful and blah, blah, blah. That voice in your head, the trick is to not mistake it as you. Because, just like monotheism and polytheism, it's like you're not mono-minded. You think there's only one you because we're in a monotheistic patriarchal society. The reality is that there is a multiplicity of mind. Right, and you say this every day. You say, well, what do I have for dessert? On the one hand, I want chocolate ice cream. On the other hand, I want vanilla cake. But you are of two minds.
Mm.
That's okay. You're not a polytheist pagan, burned at the stake or whatever. You are of two minds. That's okay. So when you realize, oh my gosh, there's this voice, you can talk to the voice. And just like that, you can talk to the muse. And what you can ask her in this case is you can consult her on how to titrate this feedback and guidance that's coming out of you, and not unload it all at once. She may tell you how, or she may be like, no, that's for the people that are coming to you now, that's what we need to do. And if you don't want to suffer the pain and feel the guilt of the pain, either deal with it because this is what I'm doing, or we won't do it, we'll just stop. And it's not like screw you all or nothing. It's like, oh, well, we'll find something else for you to do instead. Right? Like you have agency. You are a sovereign in this too. You are a creator, not a slave. Right? The ancestors, all these spirits, these are your peers. These are your peers. So anyway, you can just work it out with her. And the thing is, we all have this in some way, right? We see the thing very clearly within us, but then it takes time to come to grips with our seeing. And then there's a whole separate question of how do you dose it out and package it and distribute it to everyone else for the best effect? Because medicine is pointless if people don't take it and fear it. Right? So it doesn't matter if you're right. Being right is irrelevant. Right? If people are not ready, then it's just a vain, egotistical thing, which is fine too. If you need to do that, right? Because you have to have fun too. So that's fine. But it's like if your intention is to sort of deliver something that will be effective, they've got to be ready, right? If all you have it is in needle form and they're terrified of needles, then that's not going to work. And maybe you just let somebody else take care of that person, right? You only go to the people who can handle needles. But at the end of the day, my experience is there are some things you have within you that you will never actually teach. And that's just the way it is. But for me, many things I thought I would never get to share have come out in programs that I ended up being moved to develop years later. Or even here in Live Sacred Space has been this like accelerated sprint of like all these topics I never thought I would talk about publicly coming out because of the freaking pandemic, right? And there's still other things that I probably will never talk about publicly because there's no market for it, right? People are not ready, and I'm like, what's the rush anyhow? I have access to the topics, so I enjoy them, and I know they're not ready because they don't even ask the question, right? They don't even know what question they would ask to access these things that are just fine, and it's fine to not share everything that's coming to you with the outer world. There is a shift. There's always a lag and delay. Like anything, like when I mentioned Picasso and Blue Period or whatever, there was a lag and delay there, right? It took people months or actually a couple of years to actually get Cubism, and then everyone copied Cubism after that. Right? But Picasso wasn't like, oh, you fools, you're idiots, you need to catch up. It's like, it matters not at all to me whether you catch up. It's like, I have no choice. I'm going in this direction because I follow the muse first and the need and want come afterward. So yeah, that's what I have.
Thank you for that. So the next one is also about Muse. So in the context, I want to give a context to this because I picked it up from the comment section. So when you were talking about the Muse, you said, you can follow the Muse in the sacred. And if it means that you have to break commitments in the profane, while still paying the price of breaking commitments in the profane, you have to do whatever needs to be done. So the question was, so all those marital commitments we thought were in the sacred, were they not really sacred commitments or were they profane commitments? So how does that work?
So for me, I remember this question. Thank you for this question. So the way I think about this is, no, marital commitments are still sacred. and you may still end up breaking them.
Mm.
It's like if the muse leads you on a path where you grow and all of these things that were suppressed or you honestly just didn't even know they were in you come out. And to stay in the current structures of your life, to keep the masks on that the current life around you requires you. If you take the mask off, stuff will break left and right, right? Your marriage, your job, or a family dynamic with siblings, how you currently live and take care of yourself, how you eat, how you feed yourself, the current regime of how you prosecute and handle your life vision on the level of need and want. Once desire is fully revealed, if you follow desire, you may need to break bones and reset bones on the level of need and want, with varying levels of severity. So, I mean, the fairy tale, like wonderful version is when your need and want track is already like riddled with addiction and crime and self-harm. And then you see the light, you realize, oh my gosh, I'm meant to like help other people. I'm meant to be a painter. And it's like, oh my gosh, once he started painting, he cleaned up his life, right? And he stopped doing drugs and everything. That's exactly the same thing. You saw your higher level of desire. And once that's set, that realigned all your need and want. You stopped drinking, you stopped all this other stuff happily because you're like engorging yourself with your bliss and desire. And another version of that happening is you're living your life, you're married, everything's happy on the surface, 2.5 kids, white picket fence, 2 cars in the driveway, blah, 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 all of that happening. And then even then, your desire ruptures forward. And you decide to like run with it, and that realigns everything as well. And it's you could never be married again. You could be celibate. You could be like, married to 2 people after. I mean, there's all kinds of, you just don't know, because desire is the thing that is not templatable, right? So you just need to like parachute in and see what you find there, and kind of develop your path as you go. At the desire level, there is no path, right? You make the path by walking it, right? So if the muse leads you on a path where you have to grow to fulfill her requests, and in the process change parts of your life, then at that point you have a choice, right? You have to make a choice as to whether you continue following the muse or not. And there is no right or wrong answer, by the way. Right? I have my bias, but it's just a bias, right? I don't hold my bias as like the gospel, like correct answer. But as you grow more and more, like a snake, skins will be shed. And as you shed skins and take off masks, maybe that will cause stuff in the world around you to break, and maybe not. There's just no telling. There's no rule, right? Everybody's different. That's why for me, it is helpful to have a clear feeling of what this muse business is actually about and what it means to you specifically. Not the rules of collective energy or not. It's like, no, go talk to her and get as much information from her as possible as to like what her plan for you is. And often she won't tell you more than 3 chess moves ahead because she knows you'll be terrified. She's titrating to you. She's like, if I told you the full vision, you'd never talk to me again. And I'm not even going to say that to you. Right? Because is the muse on your side, or is the muse like fulfilling this vast vision of which you play a part? And she doesn't care if you want to or not. She's going to goad you and coax you and lie and deceive and cheat to make sure you move forward on the board that she is in charge of, right? And because sometimes she feels selfish. She's like, she doesn't give a shit about what you're afraid of. And she's more in Crone mode, and she's just like cattle prodding you forward, right? Well, then it's the question of, this very interesting question of like, is she not caring about me and she's just using me as a pawn? Or is me following this path, whether I like to or not, actually the best thing for me after all? And I just don't have eyes to see, because this is the path. This is the reason there's no dispute. This is the reason I'm on the planet. I'm just too chicken shit to like break my life as it is because it's so comfortable to fulfill this destiny. right? So often people come back with the answer, yeah, she doesn't give a shit about me and she's ruthless, and it is the best thing for me because it is my life's destiny.
Yeah.
And I'm in like unbelievable pain.
Just
So
the
that's
power.
why, yeah, just the stakes are high. Those are the stakes, right?
Yeah.
So if those are the stakes, I'm not going to send you forth with all these intellectual categorizations of the muse and say, I have a great time. I'm like, no. I'm not your advisor, right? You talk to your muse. This is between you and her. This is between you and her, and the two of you need to make your own decision, right? Even if you say, oh, but my muse told me to do this. Well, that doesn't absolve you of responsibility. You still have to consent. You do have a choice.
Yeah.
You're just choosing to break stuff and go in that direction. And ideally, you own that choice. And all the cost it may bring.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gary, what did you want to say?
Yeah. I was just musing about the point that, when you realize the muse sometimes doesn't give a shit about your discomfort or your pain or any of that and says, this has to be done and just do it. Sometimes it's just the power of that clarity itself is somewhat reassuring, even though there is all this other pain to pay for, right? So it's a weird situation. Do you say yes because there's so much clarity, or do you just say no because there's clarity that you have so much pain to suffer?
Thank you for explaining it to me, and no thank you.
Yeah.
As von Franz has said, as Viktor Frankl has said, right, almost any suffering is bearable if you understand the meaning of it. In other words, almost any suffering is bearable if you can see the pattern of it, if you can see the archetype of it. The archetype is what allows you to, in this case, accelerate the manifestation of moving all the way through your pain and accepting it. Not happily, but you're like, I know what I'm paying for. I'm paying for this live vision, so fine. Right? Stick the needle in me twice, even though I'm terrified of needles. Just get it over with, break it, do it.
Yeah.
Because you see the pattern. And that is why it accelerates manifestation. Yeah. Because your own resistance in the Frankl and von Franz case, your own resistance is reduced because it's the same pain. It's not less painful, but your capacity to take the added pain goes up because you see the larger pattern. You see the blueprint of the building that's going to be there, and it's like, okay, this is why I need to cut down these extra 2 trees. It's killing me, right? The squirrels are running; they have no place to live, and you could say, forget the building, let the trees stand, or you could say, cut the trees and build the building. But in either direction, it's your choice. Yeah. Muse is guiding you, but it's always your choice. Yeah.
It's also interesting that you say, the muse takes on this Crone-like stance of, saying that this is how it is, take it or leave it. Because the next question, the final question, by the way, for today, is, can you explain the difference between the muse and the Crone?
You are threading the golden thread beautifully today, I have to say.
The question,
not the order we agreed on at all. We're just like, I'm like, where is that question? I love it. Okay. So, the difference between the muse and the Crone. I love this. So I will explain the archetypes by my understanding and feeling. But again, the actual difference for you in your life, to find that out, is to ask them directly. It's like asking me, what is the difference between a brother and a sister? I can say something about it, but if you're thinking about your own son and daughter, then you have to ask them. If you're the sister and you're thinking about you and your brother, you have to ask yourself and him. Right? So I can give you some general principles, but ask your own specific instances for sure. So the muse is your guide, generally always helpful, and has the overall blueprint and guides you through. the reason you can trust her in the end is not because, oh, she's going to take care of you and whatever. It's because she holds the blueprint. And so even if you're getting dragged kicking and screaming, when you come out the other side and you look back, you'll realize the pattern she just dragged me through, I hate to admit it, but it is part of the pattern, the blueprint. You know, I'm all like rainbows and unicorns. I love this elephant trunk. And she just pulled me out of the elephant's ass, right? And when looking back, I have to admit that is part of the elephant too. And do I want the elephant? Yes, I do. It's why I'm even here. So I guess I hate it, but bring it on. Bring it on. Now the crone can be your guide too, and can function as your muse. But the crone archetype, in my experience, presents as a more independent, potentially harsher and terrifying figure. Both Crone and Muse are managing the overall pattern and massaging the overall pattern to get you from A to B in the circumambulatory, labyrinthine grand plan, right? But the sense is that the Muse will tend to try to titrate things to be more doable for you. She'll try to spoon feed you along the way. And maybe they're like two faces of the same. I mean, it's all the same goddess, right? Feminine vision power. But the sense is that the crone will just throw you in the deep end of the water pool, regardless of whether you can swim. The crone feeling is much less nurturing. And maybe that's a good thing, right? Maybe they like tag team, right? The Muse is like the good-ish cop. And when you really are still like, you know, no, I'm not going, I can't go, I'm scared, I'm terrified, she steps back and then the crone comes in and just starts slapping you around and like pushes you out of the plane. And in that sense, maybe it's a quote unquote good thing. Maybe it's needed because you're just, oh, so smart and you keep outsmarting the Muse or finding yet another shiny thing to distract you with. And then the crone just steps in and it's like, okay, we don't have time for this shit, and just crushes you. Right. So for me, if in your dreams and in your mythopoetics, you see a terrifying crone, that is often an indication. I don't say this directly to my advisees because I try to take on, I try to be still the good cop, right? But when you tell me you have a dream and there's like a witch in a hut and you're terrified or whatever, I try to keep you calm so you don't run away from the dream. But when I see that, I'm like, okay, you're in trouble, right? You have been sent to the principal's office, right? When you're sitting there in front of the principal, and I went to Catholic school, so the principal is always a nun and terrifying, right? There's no Muse. That's Crone. That's Crone. With reverence, but that's not Muse. That's Crone. That's Crone, right? And in Catholic school, they don't call your parents. They deal with you on the spot.
Yeah.
Right? They deal with you on the spot. And that's okay. That's almost a good gauge of the severity of the situation. Like when you see the crone, you're like, okay, time to like, you know, it's like a evangelical come to Jesus meeting, right? It was like, we have this meeting where it's like, we're debating and everything, but now it's just time to come to you. You're just in or out. You're in or out. Are you doing this thing or not? And when you see the crone, it's like, okay, time to stop, you know, mentally going in circles and delaying. It's like, it's time to just step forward and get going. That's the feeling and flavor for me. And for my money, even there, like I feel like everything I've just said, I feel like I've already said too much, right? These are two profoundly powerful aspects of the feminine. And the last thing you want to do, especially, you know, as a man, is to try to put them in these constrained, predictable boxes of like rule-based behavior and categorizations and rote explanations. So there's no rules here. I'm just talking about the feeling I've had in the past. But if you want the real answer, the authoritative answer, you go and talk to them directly. You know, tell them I said hi, tell them I love them, and, you know, try and put in a good word for me too. So yeah, so that's it. I think that's what I have to say.
Yeah, I love that the flavor of the questions, all of the questions that came up today were more of, you know, curiosity and wonder about the nature of, the feminine, the muse, the crone, kind of trying to examine from different angles and saying, okay, what does she look like, and what is she like? But your approach has been like, go talk to her, and you kind of nudging to say, okay, you don't have to be afraid, you can go talk to her. So it's not more of trying to understand her by reading a book, but directly just walking up to her and say, hey, hi, can we have a coffee, kind of a thing. So that's
and my fear and how gingerly I'm doing it should tell you something about the Crone and the Muse too.
Yeah, the Muse definitely for a coffee, I suppose, but
yeah.
the Crone, I would be like, am I invited?
Oh, you're invited.
Yeah.
Try not to wait till you're summoned.
Oh God, oh dear. That's
Catholic school, right? So it's like the secret of Catholic school is that the goody two shoes are the ones that actually get away with murder.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're friendly with the principal, then they're like talking to you and you're high-fiving them and everything. If you actually get called into the principal's office, if they have the hard evidence, they'll be like, Arthur, I'm just so disappointed in you. But most of the time, they'll be like, you didn't really do this, did you? Tell me who did it. Once you're set in the archetype of the goody two-shoes, I mean, this is a Catholic thing in general, right? Which I love. It's very hard to unseat. It's very hard to unseat. The goody two-shoes always are the ones who get away with murder.
So that's why I was saying put it in.
On. Did I say that? I'm in such big trouble.
Yeah.
All right, so that's it. That's it for questions.
Those were the list of questions. Thank you so much.
Good job, Gary. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, so everyone, that's it. So please ask more questions as you like. And then those of you in LGA, I'll see you on Friday. Those of you in Sacred Space, I'll see you next Sunday. Have a great week. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you in the next session.
All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Gary. Bye.
Bye.